The Florida sun was beginning to set, casting a warm golden light over the small town of Brightwater. The air was thick with humidity, the kind that made your clothes cling to your skin, and the heavy scent of magnolias filled the atmosphere. The streets were mostly silent, save for the occasional hum of a passing car or the distant laughter of children playing. It was a town where everyone knew each other, where secrets were hard to keep, and life moved at a slow, steady pace. Jack Rivers, a local auto mechanic, was wrapping up his day at Rivers' Garage, the family business he had taken over after his father's passing. The garage was a relic of a bygone era, with vintage signs advertising oil brands that no longer existed and the faint smell of gasoline lingering in the air. Jack had always been a man of routine, content with the predictable rhythm of his life. He found comfort in the mechanical world, where problems could be solved with the right tools and a bit of effort. But that evening, something out of the ordinary was about to disrupt his routine. As Jack locked up the garage, his eyes caught a strange glow in the distance. It was faint, a soft blue light flickering near the side of the road about a mile away. Curiosity piqued. Jack jumped into his old Ford truck, the engine rumbling to life with a reluctant groan. He drove toward the light, the crunch of gravel beneath his tires the only sound in the stillness of the evening. As he got closer, the glow became more distinct, and Jack's heart began to race. Standing by the roadside was a woman unlike anyone he had ever seen. She appeared otherworldly, with smooth blue skin that shimmered in the fading light. Her hair was a cascade of inky black, flowing down her back like a waterfall of midnight. She wore a form-fitting suit of silvery material that clung to her slender frame, catching the light in a way that made her seem almost ethereal. But it was her eyes that truly captivated Jack. Deep, serene pools that held a mix of fear, determination, and something ancient and untouchable. Jack stopped the truck and stepped out, feeling a knot of anxiety tighten in his stomach. "Hey there, are you okay?" he called out, trying to keep his voice steady. The woman turned to face him, her expression unreadable. For a moment, there was silence, the kind that makes you acutely aware of every second ticking by. "I'm lost," she finally spoke, her voice soft but clear, with a musical lilt that hinted at an accent Jack couldn't place. "I need help." Jack took a cautious step forward, his eyes scanning her for any signs of injury. "Do you need me to call someone? An ambulance? The police?" He was met with a quick shake of her head, a hint of panic flashing in her eyes. "No, no police," she said quickly. "Please, I just need a place to stay, somewhere safe, just for a little while." Jack hesitated. There was something undeniably strange about the situation, but he couldn't shake the feeling that she was genuinely in trouble. He took a deep breath and nodded. "All right, you can stay with me for the night, but we need to talk about what's going on. What's your name?" She looked at him, her eyes softening. "Luna," she said, almost as if testing the word on her tongue. "My name is Luna." With that, Jack led Luna to the truck and opened the passenger door. As she climbed in, he couldn't help but notice the grace with which she moved, like a dancer gliding across a stage. He got into the driver's seat and pulled back onto the road, the silence between them heavy with unspoken questions. He drove through the quiet streets of Brightwater, glancing occasionally at Luna, who stared out the window with a distant, haunted look. They arrived at Jack's modest home on the outskirts of town, a small single-story house with peeling paint and a well-worn porch. The house was a testament to Jack's simple lifestyle, filled with mismatched furniture and the comforting clutter of a life lived alone. He led Luna inside, offering her a seat on the couch. As she sat, she seemed to relax slightly, though her eyes never stopped darting around, taking in her surroundings. "Can I get you something? Water? Tea?" Jack offered, trying to ease the tension. "Water would be nice," Luna replied, her voice barely above a whisper. As Jack moved to the kitchen, she watched him with a curious intensity, as if trying to gauge his intentions. He returned with a glass of water, handing it to her with a small, reassuring smile. "Here you go. So, Luna, you said you're lost. Where are you from?" Luna took a sip of the water, her fingers trembling slightly as she held the glass. She looked up at Jack, her eyes searching his face for a moment before she spoke. "I'm not from around here. Not from this planet. Actually, Jack blinked, taken aback by her words. He opened his mouth to say something, but found himself at a loss. Luna continued, sensing his disbelief. I know it sounds crazy, but I'm telling the truth. I'm from a planet called Solara. I came here to escape someone dangerous. Her voice faltered, a flicker of fear crossing her face. Jack sat down across from her, trying to process what she was saying, his mind racing with 100 questions. Okay, let's say I believe you. Why Earth? Why come here? Luna sighed, setting the glass down on the coffee table. I didn't have much of a choice. My people, we have the technology to travel between worlds, but it's not easy. I came here because I needed to hide, to find a place where I could blend in. But it seems I've already attracted unwanted attention. Jack leaned forward, his brow furrowing. What kind of attention? She hesitated, her eyes flickering with uncertainty. His name is Zevruk. He's from a neighboring planet, Erinder, a tyrant who wants to conquer Solara. My people wanted to use me as a pawn, to marry him and secure an alliance, but I couldn't do it. I couldn't let him use me like that, so I ran. Jack felt a pang of sympathy for her. The idea of being forced into a marriage, especially with someone dangerous, struck a chord with him. He ran a hand through his hair, sighing. So you're hiding from this Zevruk guy and his people. That's why you don't want the police involved. Luna nodded. Yes. If they find me, they'll force me back, or worse, they'll hurt the people here. I can't let that happen. Jack sat back, rubbing his chin thoughtfully. The situation was beyond anything he could have imagined, but there was a sincerity in Luna's eyes that made him want to believe her. He knew the risks, but something inside him urged him to help her, to protect her from whatever danger she was fleeing. All right, he said finally, meeting her gaze. You can stay here. We'll figure this out together, but we need to be careful. If anyone asks, we'll tell them you're my wife. It'll keep people from asking too many questions. Luna looked at him in surprise, a small smile playing on her lips. Thank you, Jack. I don't know how to repay you. He shrugged, trying to play it cool despite the strange thrill that ran through him at the thought of pretending to be married to this beautiful, mysterious woman. We'll figure it out. Just try to relax. You're safe here. As the evening wore on, they settled into an uneasy companionship, both aware of the precarious situation they were in. Jack set up a makeshift bed for Luna in the spare room, feeling a strange mix of protectiveness and curiosity. Who was this alien woman really, and what had he gotten himself into? As he lay in bed that night, staring at the ceiling, Jack couldn't shake the feeling that his life was about to change in ways he couldn't yet fathom. The arrival of Luna had already shattered the quiet predictability of his world, and he had a sense that things would only get more complicated from here. But despite the uncertainty, a small part of him was excited. For the first time in a long while, he felt like something extraordinary was unfolding, and he was right in the middle of it. In the darkness, as the town of Brightwater slept, Jack drifted off with the image of Luna's luminous blue eyes lingering in his mind. Little did he know, this was just the beginning of a journey that would take him far beyond the stars, into a world of intrigue, danger, and a love that transcended the boundaries of space and time. Morning in Brightwater came gently, with the first light of dawn creeping through the windows of Jack's modest home. The chirping of birds and the distant hum of traffic marked the beginning of a new day. Jack awoke to the faint smell of coffee, a comforting aroma that pulled him from the remnants of a dream he couldn't quite remember. He stretched, the events of the previous night slowly coming back to him. Luna, the mysterious alien woman, was asleep in the spare room, hiding from a dangerous tyrant from another world. He dressed quickly and headed to the kitchen, where he found Luna standing by the window, gazing out at the quiet street. Her hair, still slightly mussed from sleep, fell around her shoulders in waves of black. She wore a simple outfit Jack had hastily put together for her, a pair of jeans and a t-shirt he'd found in the back of his closet. The clothes were a bit too big, but they would do for now. She turned as he entered, a soft smile touching her lips. "Good morning," she greeted, her voice still carrying that melodic lilt. "I hope you don't mind. I found the coffee. I thought it might be a good idea to start learning more about, well, everything." Jack chuckled, pouring himself a cup. No problem. Coffee's a good place to start. He took a sip, savoring the warmth. How'd you sleep? Luna's smile faded slightly, her eyes darkening with a hint of worry. Not well. I kept thinking about everything that's happened, and what could happen. Jack nodded, understanding the weight of her situation. He leaned against the counter, trying to find the right words. We'll figure this out, but we need to keep a low profile. Brightwater is a small town. People notice things. If we're going to say you're my wife, we need to make it convincing. Luna tilted her head, curiosity gleaming in her eyes. Tell me about Earth marriages. How do they work? Jack scratched his head, slightly embarrassed. Well, it varies, but generally, a marriage is a partnership. Two people decide to spend their lives together, support each other. There are ceremonies, legal documents, and usually a lot of questions from family and friends. He paused, considering how best to explain. It's a big deal. Luna listened intently, her expression thoughtful. If we pretend to be married, Jack hesitated, feeling a strange mix of emotions. It means we'll need to act like we're close, like we know each other well. People might ask questions, and we'll need to have answers. We should probably come up with a backstory, Luna suggested. You know, John, I would never ask for help without offering something in return. I'll pay you. That's not necessary, Jack interrupted. I don't want anything in return. I just want to help. Luna nodded, her eyes brightening with determination. Then let's do it. Let's create our story. They spent the morning concocting their fictional history, filling in details about how they met, fell in love, and decided to settle in Brightwater. They agreed on a simple narrative. Jack had met Luna while traveling abroad, though they kept the specifics vague, and she had moved to the United States to be with him. It was a plausible story, and given Brightwater's quiet nature, it was unlikely to be scrutinized too closely. The sun hung high in the sky by the time Jack and Luna finished their story. The fictional tale of their whirlwind romance felt surreal to Jack, almost like it belonged to someone else. But there was no time to dwell on the strangeness of it all. If they were going to make this work, they had to be convincing. Jack glanced at the clock on the wall, realizing with a jolt that he was running late. We should probably get into town, he said, grabbing his keys. People will start wondering if they don't see me at the garage, and it'll give you a chance to meet a few folks. Luna nodded, a trace of nervousness flickering in her eyes. Are you sure this is a good idea? What if I don't fit in? Jack gave her a reassuring smile. You'll do fine. Just stick close to me, and if you get stuck, just remember our story. They headed out to the truck, and as they drove into town, Jack couldn't help but feel a knot of anxiety in his stomach. Luna was already attracting attention. Her otherworldly beauty, even in the simple clothes she wore, was enough to turn heads. He could only hope that people would be too polite, or too shy, to ask too many questions. Brightwater's Main Street was a picture of small-town America. Mom-and-pop shops lined the street with colorful awnings and hand-painted signs. The diner on the corner, Betty's Place, was already buzzing with the lunchtime crowd. As they pulled up in front of the garage, Jack noticed a few familiar faces walking by, their expressions curious as they spotted Luna in the passenger seat. Remember, Jack said as he parked the truck, we're just a regular married couple. Act natural. Luna nodded, taking a deep breath as she stepped out of the truck. She stuck close to Jack as they walked into the garage, the familiar smells of motor oil and metal greeting them. Jack felt a little more at ease in his domain, surrounded by the tools of his trade. But his sense of security was short-lived. As they entered, Jack's friend and co-worker, Tom Wheeler, looked up from under the hood of a Chevy. Tom was a burly man in his late 40s, with a weathered face and a friendly smile that crinkled at the edges of his eyes. Hey, Jack. You're late today, he called out, his eyes flicking to Luna. And you brought company? Jack braced himself, his mind racing for the right words. Tom, this is Luna, my wife. She just got into town last night. Tom's eyes widened, and he wiped his hands on a rag before extending one to Luna. Well, I'll be damned. Didn't know you were hitched, Jack. Nice to meet you, Luna. Luna shook Tom's hand, her grip firm but gentle. Nice to meet you too, Tom. Jack's told me a lot about you. Tom chuckled, glancing at Jack with a raised eyebrow. I bet he has. Well, any wife of Jack's is a friend of mine. You two planning to stick around Brightwater for a while? That's the plan, Jack answered, feeling a small surge of relief at how smoothly the introduction had gone. Luna's still getting used to the place, but I think she'll like it here. Tom grinned, clearly pleased with the idea of Jack settling down. That's great news. We could use more folks like you two around here. And if you ever need anything, Luna, don't hesitate to ask. Brightwater's a tight-knit community. We look out for each other. Luna smiled warmly, a genuine expression that lit up her face. Thank you, Tom. That means a lot. As Tom returned to his work, Jack gave Luna a small, approving nod. They were doing well so far, but he knew they couldn't relax just yet. There were still plenty of people in town who would want to meet the newcomer, and every interaction would be a test of their story. The day wore on, with Jack juggling his usual tasks at the garage while introducing Luna to a steady stream of curious townsfolk. They stopped by Betty's place for lunch, where Betty herself, a stout woman with a heart of gold, insisted on giving Luna a tour of the diner, peppering her with questions about how she and Jack met. Luna handled it all with grace, sticking closely to the story they'd crafted that morning. Jack was impressed by how quickly she adapted, but he also noticed the strain in her eyes as the day went on. By the time they left the diner, Jack could tell that Luna was exhausted, though she tried to hide it. He decided it was best to head home early, giving them both a chance to decompress. As they drove back to the house, the late afternoon sun casting long shadows across the road, Jack glanced over at Luna. She was quiet, staring out the window with a faraway look in her eyes. You did great today, he said, trying to break the silence. People are going to believe us. Luna turned to him, her expression soft but tinged with worry. Thank you, Jack. But I have to admit, it's harder than I thought it would be. Keeping up the act, it's draining. Jack nodded, understanding the weight of what she was saying. I get it. But you're safe here, Luna. We'll take it one day at a time. She smiled, a small, tired smile that tugged at Jack's heart. I appreciate that more than you know. When they arrived home, the house felt like a sanctuary after the long day. Jack made a simple dinner, and they ate in companionable silence. As the evening wore on, Luna seemed to relax, the tension gradually easing from her shoulders. After dinner, they settled into the living room, the hum of crickets and the rustle of leaves outside creating a peaceful backdrop. Jack turned on the TV, flipping through channels aimlessly, more out of habit than interest. Luna watched the screen with a curious fascination, though Jack wasn't sure if she was actually following the show. Eventually, she spoke, her voice soft. Jack, do you think this could work? Do you think I can really hide here? Jack turned to her, seeing the vulnerability in her eyes. He didn't have all the answers, but he knew one thing for sure. I think we have a chance. And as long as you're here, I'll do everything I can to protect you. Luna looked at him for a long moment, as if searching for something in his face. Then she nodded, her expression resolute. Thank you. I trust you, Jack. Her words hung in the air between them, a quiet promise that felt both comforting and daunting. Jack knew that the road ahead wouldn't be easy, but as they sat there, side by side in the dimly lit living room, he felt a strange sense of peace. They were in this together, and for now, that was enough. As the night deepened, they said their goodnights, each retreating to their own room. Jack lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, his thoughts drifting to Luna and the unbelievable reality that had become his life. There were still so many questions, so much he didn't understand, but he also felt a growing sense of resolve. He had made a promise to help Luna, and he intended to keep it. Whatever came next, they would face it together. And maybe, just maybe, they would find a way to make this impossible situation work. Outside, the stars twinkled in the vast, dark sky, unaware of the small, quiet house below where two people, one human, one not, lay dreaming of the uncertain future that awaited them. The morning sun rose gently over Brightwater, casting its warm glow through the thin curtains of Jack's modest home. The town was beginning to stir as Jack woke to the familiar smell of coffee brewing in the kitchen. He stretched, shaking off the remnants of sleep, and made his way downstairs. Luna was already up, Her dark hair still tousled from sleep as she stood by the kitchen counter, sipping from a cup. She had a thoughtful look on her face, as if she was lost in her own world. "Good morning," Jack said, trying to sound cheerful despite the lingering fatigue. "How'd you sleep?" Luna glanced up, her eyes reflecting a mixture of relief and concern. "Better than last night. Thank you for making me feel welcome." Jack poured himself a cup of coffee and took a seat at the table. "I'm glad to hear that. Today might be a bit more relaxed. Just a few errands, and then I have to finish some work at the garage. It should be a quieter day." As they ate breakfast, Jack noticed Luna's eyes drifting toward the window every now and then, as if she was scanning the street for something. He was about to ask if something was wrong when the sound of a car engine caught his attention. A sleek, black sedan pulled up in front of the house, and Jack's heart skipped a beat. He recognized the car as belonging to Deputy Carla Ramirez, the town's local law enforcement officer. She stepped out of the vehicle, her badge glinting in the sunlight. Jack felt a sudden surge of anxiety. "Stay here," he instructed Luna quietly. "I'll see what this is about." He walked outside to greet Carla, forcing a friendly smile despite the knot of tension in his stomach. "Morning, Carla. What brings you by?" Carla, a sharp-eyed woman in her early 30s with a no-nonsense demeanor, gave him a curious look. "Morning, Jack. I'm just doing a routine check. We've had a few reports of a stranger in town lately. Thought I'd stop by and see if you've heard anything." Jack's heart pounded. He needed to deflect suspicion without revealing too much. "A stranger? Can't say I've noticed anything unusual. We've had a few new faces around, but nothing out of the ordinary." Carla raised an eyebrow, clearly not convinced. "Well, if you do hear anything, let me know. We want to make sure everyone stays safe around here." Jack nodded, trying to keep his tone casual. "Sure thing, Carla. I'll keep an ear out." As Carla got back into her car and drove away, Jack let out a breath he hadn't realized he was holding. He turned back to the house, his mind racing. He needed to calm Luna's nerves and make sure they were prepared for any more questions that might come their way. He walked inside to find Luna already standing by the window, her expression tense. "Everything okay?" she asked, her voice tinged with worry. "Yeah, just a routine check," Jack said, trying to sound reassuring. "Deputy Ramirez is just making sure everything's all right. I told her we haven't seen anything unusual." Luna nodded, though she looked unconvinced. "I hope that's enough to keep her off our backs. I don't want to draw any more attention." Jack gave her a reassuring smile. "We'll be fine. Let's just focus on blending in and keeping a low profile." With that, they finished their breakfast, and Jack set out for the day's errands. He and Luna stopped by the local grocery store, where Jack made a point to introduce Luna to a few more people. They were met with friendly smiles and warm welcomes, but Jack could sense an undercurrent of curiosity. Luna managed to handle the attention with grace, but Jack could tell it was wearing on her. Back at the garage, Jack worked on a few cars, while Luna helped out by organizing tools and keeping the place tidy. As they worked side by side, Jack noticed how natural Luna seemed in her role, even if she was clearly struggling to adjust to the new environment. Around noon, Jack received a call from Tom. "Hey, Jack. Thought you might like to know. We've got a town meeting this evening. Just a heads up." Jack frowned, his mind racing. Town meetings were a big deal in Brightwater, and they attracted a lot of attention. It was the kind of event where rumors could spread like wildfire. He glanced at Luna, who was looking up from her task with a puzzled expression. "What's a town meeting?" Luna asked, sensing Jack's concern. "It's just a gathering where everyone talks about local issues," Jack explained. "But it's important. If people start talking, it might be hard to keep things under wraps." Luna's face paled slightly. "Do you think they'll talk about me?" "Possibly," Jack said, "but we'll deal with it. Let's just be prepared." As the day wore on, Jack's mind was preoccupied with the upcoming meeting. He knew it was essential to be cautious and to have a solid plan. When evening came, he and Luna headed to the town hall, which was buzzing with activity. The small, brick building was packed with residents chatting and catching up on local gossip. Jack and Luna entered the hall, and Jack could immediately feel the shift in atmosphere. Eyes turned toward them, and whispers rippled through the crowd. He spotted Tom, who waved them over with a welcoming grin. "Hey, Jack. Luna." Glad you could make it, Tom said, gesturing for them to join him at a table. As they took their seats, Jack noticed the curious glances from various townsfolk. He felt Luna tense beside him, her fingers gripping the edge of her chair. He placed a reassuring hand on her arm, trying to convey calm. The meeting began, with the town's mayor, an elderly man named Mr. Howard, taking the podium. He went through the usual updates about town projects and community events. But as the discussion moved toward new residents, Jack felt a knot of apprehension. And now, Mr. Howard announced, we have a few new faces in town. Jack Mitchell and his wife Luna have recently joined us. Let's give them a warm welcome. There was a polite round of applause, and Jack felt Luna's shoulders relax slightly. The mayor continued, discussing minor local matters and upcoming events. Jack kept a close eye on Luna, watching for any signs of distress. During a brief lull in the meeting, a woman named Mrs. Fletcher, known for her keen interest in everyone's business, approached their table. So, Jack, Luna, how are you settling in? I've heard you're from out of town. Luna flashed a friendly smile. Yes, we've just moved here. Jack and I traveled a bit before settling down here. Mrs. Fletcher's eyes sparkled with curiosity. Oh, that sounds lovely. Where did you travel to? Jack stepped in smoothly. We did some traveling in Europe and Asia before deciding to settle in Brightwater. Mrs. Fletcher seemed satisfied with the answer, though Jack could tell she wasn't entirely convinced. She chatted for a few more minutes before moving on to mingle with others. Jack let out a sigh of relief. As the meeting continued, Luna seemed to gain confidence, managing to engage in polite conversation with a few residents. By the time they left, the crowd had begun to thin out, and Jack felt a sense of accomplishment. They had managed to keep their story intact, but he knew the challenges were far from over. Walking back to the truck, Jack glanced at Luna, who was looking more relaxed. You did great tonight. I think people are starting to buy our story. Luna nodded, her eyes reflecting a mixture of relief and exhaustion. Thanks for your help, Jack. I don't know how I'd manage all this without you. Jack smiled, feeling a sense of camaraderie. We're in this together. Just hang in there, and we'll make it work. As they drove back home, the stars began to twinkle in the evening sky. The tranquility of the night seemed to offer a brief respite from the whirlwind of the day. Jack glanced over at Luna, who was staring out the window with a thoughtful expression. For a moment, Jack allowed himself to imagine a future where things could settle into a semblance of normalcy. It was a fragile hope, but it was all they had. He knew the days ahead would be filled with uncertainty, but he also knew he would face them with Luna by his side. When they arrived home, they settled into their evening routine. Jack made a light dinner, and they ate in quiet companionship. Afterward, as they sat together in the living room, the weight of the day seemed to lift, if only slightly. Luna finally broke the silence. Jack, do you ever think about what life would be like if things were different? If we weren't pretending? Jack looked at her, sensing the depth of her question. Sometimes. I think about how different things could be if we didn't have to hide. But right now, we have to focus on making this work. Luna nodded, her gaze drifting to the window. It's strange, isn't it? How life can change so suddenly. It is, Jack agreed. But we'll adapt. We always do. As the night wore on, Jack and Luna found solace in their shared determination to face whatever challenges lay ahead. The journey they were on was far from ordinary, but together, they were finding their way through the unknown.